Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Karen Travers marched onto my land with a clipboard and a fake smile, I thought she was just another nosy neighbor. I was wrong. By the time the BBQ smoke cleared, my property was trashed, my name slandered, and war with the HOA queen had officially begun. I never really thought of myself as a territorial guy until Karen Travers showed up with her clipboard, her smile like a strained muscle, and that voice, sugary but sharp, the kind that made you instinctively want to check your security cameras. I'm not the type to fly off the handle. I run an IT company. I prefer order, clean code, quiet weekends, and people who understand the meaning of personal space. That last part, unfortunately, was a foreign concept to Karen. And as far as I could tell, she had no plans to learn. I live on 5 acres just outside of Boulder, Colorado, right on the wooded edge of a gated community called Clear Pine Ridge. It's a place with picture-perfect lawns, identical white mailboxes, and neighbors who throw HOA meetings like they're black tie galas. My place isn't part of that world. It never was. My deed predates their subdivision by 3 decades, and my house, a sleek, modern build with stone, glass, and steel, sits just outside the invisible fence they pretend surrounds their perfect little community. Technically, I'm the neighbor from the outside. Practically, it's more like I'm the troll under the HOA bridge. And Karen, she thinks she owns the bridge. The first time she showed up, it was under the pretense of being neighborly. She waved at me while I was setting up a motion-triggered drone near the edge of the garden and walked right up the path like we had a standing coffee date. I'll admit, I was civil. Offered her some iced tea even. She declined, said she didn't have time to sit, but she did want to extend a personal invitation to join the Clear Pine Ridge Homeowners Association, as if it were some exclusive club and not the bureaucratic nightmare I'd intentionally chosen to avoid. I told her, politely, that I wasn't interested, that I valued my independence and liked handling my property the way I saw fit. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Instead, she gave me a pamphlet, the kind printed in soft blues and grays with vague phrases like community harmony and shared values. I didn't even make it to the back cover before tossing it in the recycling bin. Over the next few weeks, the frequency increased. She started showing up every Saturday like it was scheduled, with new arguments, revised invitations, even a friendly offer to waive my initial contribution fee. She began mentioning how being outside the HOA made me vulnerable to miscommunication, whatever the hell that meant. Once I caught her walking the perimeter of my back garden with her phone out, clearly taking photos of my landscaping. When I asked what she was doing, she laughed and said, "Just admiring the way your trees interfere with our viewshed. It all came to a head 2 weeks ago." I had just come back from a long conference call and was trimming some hedges when I heard footsteps behind me. Karen again, uninvited, already mid-sentence. "Andy, I just wanted to remind you that our next board meeting is this Thursday, and even though you're technically not a member, your presence would really—" I cut her off, calmly but firmly. "Karen, you need to stop coming onto my property without being invited. This isn't a community park. This is my home, and I'm not interested in your board, your meetings, or your association." Her smile vanished, just like that. For the first time, she blinked, not in surprise, but in cold calculation. "There's no need to be rude," she said stiffly, turning on her heel without another word. She walked down my path like a general inspecting her troops. That was the last time she spoke to me, but not the last time I saw her. 3 nights later, one of my perimeter cams caught movement at the edge of the tree line, a figure standing just past the sensor's reach, motionless. A woman, short hair, tablet in hand. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. I just saved the clip, tagged it, and updated my security system to flag any motion near that section. The next morning, I found one of my solar garden lights pulled out and snapped in half like someone had stepped on it deliberately. That was when I knew she hadn't just taken offense. She'd taken it personally. And that's when I started wondering what someone like Karen might do with a grudge. By the time Friday rolled around, I was more than ready to get out of town. The last few weeks had been relentless. Meetings, server issues, and, of course, Karen's unsolicited HOA recruitment campaign masquerading as neighborly concern. I needed air, real air, mountains, rock formations, and no Wi-Fi. Just me, my 12-year-old daughter Zoe, and a rented cabin in Utah. She'd been begging for a father-daughter weekend ever since the last one got cut short by a server outage, and I wasn't about to cancel again. Not for work, not for Karen, not for anything. Packing went smoothly. I double-checked every door, window, and sensor in the house. My property had a multi-layered security system, motion detectors, smart locks, biometric gate access, perimeter drones, cloud-based backups. It was the kind of setup that made my neighbors nervous and my tech clients impressed. After locking the front door and syncing the security feed to my phone, I loaded Zoe and our gear into the truck. Just before we pulled away, I hesitated and looked toward the side gate, one that led to the back garden near the koi pond and tool shed. It was one of those semi-smart gates with a mechanical override, useful when the system needed rebooting. The latch was engaged, but I hadn't physically bolted it shut. The lock still showed as armed on the app, but in the back of my mind, I made a mental note to double-check it when we got back. That would come back to haunt me. As we drove out, I saw Karen on her porch, pruning a bonsai tree like she was training it for battle. She didn't look up, not even a wave, just clean, robotic clipping. Zoe noticed. "Is that the lady who always gives you mail by hand?" "Something like that," I muttered. We reached the Utah border by late afternoon and settled into a cozy log cabin near Bryce Canyon. Zoe immediately took over the fire pit duties while I unpacked and did a quick check on the home system. Everything was green, house secure, sensors armed, drone docked. I let out a slow breath and finally felt myself start to unwind. What I didn't know was that back in Colorado, the wheels were already turning. According to later footage I recovered, it started that evening. Karen, dressed in a cream pantsuit that screamed passive-aggressive brunch energy, approached the side gate and tapped lightly on the frame with her knuckles. When nothing happened, no alarms, no voice warnings, she tried the handle. It gave. She pushed the gate open slowly, glancing around like a burglar in a Disney movie, and then stepped inside. Just like that. 5 acres of private land breached by a woman who once called my Japanese maple tree unconventional for this climate. She returned an hour later, this time with a camera in hand and someone else with her, a younger woman, maybe mid-30s, clipboard in hand. From the footage, I recognized her as someone I'd seen at one of Clear Pine Ridge's block events months ago. Homeowners Association assistant or something similar. They walked the property for nearly 30 minutes, pointing, discussing, even taking photos of the gazebo, the koi pond, the BBQ island, and the stone fire ring near the garden. The next day, Karen began sending out digital invitations. The group was private, Clear Pine Ridge HOA members only, but the title was bold and tacky, Community Celebration on Shared Grounds, Saturday, BBQ Bash at the Pines. Underneath, the message read, "Join us for a lively day of celebration, good food, and neighborly bonding on a rarely used section of the Ridge's extended community land. This beautiful outdoor venue has been graciously offered by local resident Andrew Morrison for our shared enjoyment." Attached was a fake document, a scanned event agreement with a forged signature that looked nothing like mine, though to someone who'd only glanced at my legal name once on a mailbox, it might have been convincing enough. By Saturday afternoon, the Facebook group buzzed with confirmations. Over 80 people marked themselves going. Posts popped up offering to bring folding tables, kids' games, even a sound system. Someone offered a cotton candy machine. Karen commented under each post with an enthusiastic, "Perfect, can't wait." Around noon, a flatbed trailer arrived and unloaded a temporary bar, 2 industrial speakers, an inflatable bounce castle, and 3 folding tents. They parked them just inside my property line, near the walking trail that separated Clear Pine Ridge from my eastern boundary. The gate, still unbolted, stood wide open, a red ribbon tied around it like it was the entrance to a festival. The icing on the cake. Karen posted a photo of herself in front of my koi pond with the caption, "Our Ridge family knows how to host a party. Huge thanks to Andy for letting us make memories." I didn't see it, of course. I was 300 miles away, roasting marshmallows with my daughter. The security alerts never triggered because Karen had manually disabled the drone, using a kill switch hidden behind the tool shed panel, something only someone who had previously snooped around the property would know about. It wasn't until late Sunday that the real chaos would be visible, but for now, Clear Pine Ridge was just getting warmed up. The neighbors started arriving before noon, most of them dressed like they were headed to a vineyard wedding, not a hijacked backyard bash. SUVs and golf carts rolled in along the tree-lined path that separated my land from the HOA walking trail. The red ribbon Karen had tied to the gate fluttered in the breeze like some bizarre ceremonial banner. From the footage I later recovered off the cloud, it was clear that by 12:30, the lawn was overrun. Not just dotted with a few misplaced lawn chairs, overrun. Karen greeted each guest at the gate like a cult leader in a pastel sundress. She had a clipboard in one hand, sunglasses too big for her face, and that same stretched smile she always used when she wanted something. "Welcome to the Garden Commons," she kept saying, as if the back half of my property had suddenly become municipal land. "Yes, we're so lucky Andy let us use this part of the neighborhood. He's finally come around, it seems." Someone rolled up with a full food truck, a taco vendor who, from what I pieced together later, had been paid through HOA discretionary funds under the title Community Outreach Event. Another parked a portable bar near the koi pond. By 1 o'clock, there were tables with white tablecloths set up across my sod, high heels sinking into damp turf, kids running through flower beds I'd spent an entire summer coaxing out of the clay-heavy soil, and then came the sound system. 2 guys set up near my gazebo ran power from one of the external outlets near my shed, which they'd found unlocked after someone pried off the latch with a screwdriver, and hooked up a Bluetooth PA system. Karen stood by the microphone like a senator announcing new policy. "Let's all give a hand to the Morrison family," she said into the mic, voice echoing across the yard, "for being such generous neighbors and finally embracing community." That sentence alone felt like it stripped a layer of paint off my soul. Kids swarmed the inflatable bounce castle that now sagged over my carefully landscaped path lighting. Some teenager threw a half-eaten burger into the koi pond and shouted, "Dude, the fish are eating it." A group of adults gathered by the BBQ island, which someone had fired up without bothering to check the propane tank's seals. There's footage of a woman placing a plastic tablecloth over the grill hood to keep the flies out. The thing caught fire within minutes. They doused it with a bucket pulled from my water feature. By 3, it had fully transitioned from obnoxious to dangerous. A man with a shirt that read "Grill Daddy" slipped on the wet stone path and slammed into one of the custom-cut granite planters I'd installed last spring. He twisted his ankle badly and had to be carried onto a lounger near the fence. He screamed about liability and demanded someone call an ambulance. Karen tried to calm him by waving a fake lease agreement in front of his face and saying, "Everything's under HOA jurisdiction today, don't worry." One particularly bold guest, an older guy with a Bluetooth earpiece and cargo shorts, decided the shed was fair game. He rooted around until he found my chainsaw, took it out, and tried to trim what he claimed was a dangerous overhanging branch. The chainsaw had no bar oil in it. He gummed up the chain and snapped the safety latch in under 2 minutes. He left it next to a tipped-over wheelbarrow, half buried in mulch. It wasn't just the property damage. It was the attitude. People acted like they were entitled to be there, like I had relinquished ownership of my land the moment I declined an HOA invitation. One woman even said, "It's so nice to finally be able to use this space. I always thought it was weird someone just hoarded all this land for themselves." Meanwhile, my drone, meant to provide overhead surveillance in case of wildlife or trespassers, lay shattered in the bushes near the fence. Someone had taken a lacrosse stick to it. At 4:30, the police showed up. Not because of the property invasion, mind you, but because of the injured man who was now claiming he'd been assaulted by a badly installed patio light. When the officers arrived, they were met by Karen, who handed them her printed lease agreement and walked them through the area like a real estate agent. She even had the gall to say, "The owner's out of state, but he gave full permission. We're just cleaning up before he gets back." The officers took one glance around, saw the tables, the booze, the bouncy castle, the hobbling guy, and filed it away as a private event. One of them shrugged and said, "Looks like y'all got it under control," before walking off without so much as asking to verify the lease. No questions, no calls, nothing. By evening, people had begun leaving, and what they left behind looked like the aftermath of a frat house hurricane. Wine bottles jammed into my flower beds, napkins fluttering in the hedges. Someone had ripped the door off the compost bin and left it in the koi pond. I watched the footage later and counted 83 distinct guests, not including 3 kids who kept sneaking into the shed to throw screws at the bird feeder. And Karen? Right before she left, standing next to the flaming remains of a tiki torch someone had dumped into the pond, she turned to one of the guests and said, "That'll teach him not to snap at me like I'm some kind of peasant. Let's see how he likes being part of the community now." She laughed. Then she walked off my property like it was her driveway. We pulled into the driveway just before 9 p.m. on Sunday. Zoe had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, one hand still clutching the remnants of a gas station snack bag. The cabin had done its job. 3 days of hiking, marshmallows, and 0 cell service. I should have felt rested. Instead, a knot had started forming in my stomach the second we hit Colorado state lines, and by the time I saw the silhouette of my house against the fading daylight, it had hardened into a solid brick of dread. At first glance, nothing looked amiss. The gate was closed. The front yard lights blinked on as the truck approached, but the moment I rounded the house to park near the side entrance, my headlights hit it. Chaos. Plastic folding chairs littered the lawn like the aftermath of a tornado. The grass was patchy, uneven, covered in tire tracks. Someone had backed a vehicle onto the edge of my stone patio and apparently dumped an ice chest, leaving behind a trail of melting red Solo cups, pickle juice, and what looked like a grilled sausage half buried in mud. I didn't even turn off the engine. I got out, walked toward the backyard, and stopped cold. My koi pond was full of garbage, napkins, a ripped-off table leg, a purse, someone's actual purse, floating on the surface like a bloated lily pad. The gazebo was scorched, one side blackened as if someone had tried to use it as a smokehouse. The BBQ island looked like it had hosted a demolition derby. One of the metal drawer handles had been melted into a blob, and the propane tank, which I'd personally installed with safety valves, was missing its cap. I opened the shed. Tools gone. Not all of them, but enough that it was obvious. My high-powered hedge trimmer, the laser level, 2 socket sets, and, insult to injury, a brand new chainsaw still in its box. In its place sat an empty beer can, and what looked like a melted marshmallow stuck to the workbench. I walked back into the house in a daze, checked the internal panel for the security system. No alerts, no breaches, no camera triggers after Friday evening. I opened the drone menu, offline. Status manually deactivated. That was impossible. The drone had a triple-check override. I went straight to my workstation and pulled the last 36 hours from the cloud backup, isolated the garden feeds, and started reviewing. It was all there. All of it. Karen in her white blazer gesturing like a tour guide. Her smug little public servant voice caught clearly on my garden mic, saying things like, "This space has been underutilized for years," and "It's technically under shared purview now." She actually used those words. Shared purview. Like this was a goddamn village commons and not a private taxed 5-acre parcel that I paid for out of my own damn pocket. At timestamp 15:42 on Saturday, she stood by the koi pond with a plastic cup and declared to a small crowd, if Morrison wanted privacy, he should have bought a cabin in Montana. Laughter, clinking glasses. Then came the worst part. Timestamp 17:19. Karen, clearly tipsy, slurred, "Let this be a lesson to that uptight jackass. Nobody talks to me like I'm the help." Then she actually mimed a royal wave, spilled wine on her blouse, and kept on laughing. I downloaded every clip, labeled each file by time and camera angle, and synced them to both a USB drive and a secure remote server. Then I went outside, snapped over 40 photos of the destruction, the garbage, the scorch marks, and the broken furniture. I even photographed the marshmallow stuck to the vice grip in the shed. At 10:25, I called the police. The dispatcher asked if it was an emergency. I told her, only if you consider organized trespassing, property destruction, and coordinated fraud an emergency. When the officers arrived, I met them at the gate. 2 different ones this time. Thank God. I walked them around the perimeter with a flashlight, gave them a copy of the fake lease agreement Karen had shown the previous officers, thank you, HOA Facebook leaks, and showed them the surveillance footage. One officer's eyebrows shot up so high I thought they might launch off his face. They filed an official report on the spot. We took statements. They took the USB drive, photos, timestamps, estimated damages. They said I should expect a detective follow-up. I asked them what Karen could be charged with, and they rattled off a list. Trespassing, vandalism, unauthorized entry, impersonation, unlawful gathering, and my personal favorite, filing a false report to police. As they left, one of them paused and asked, "Do you know this woman personally?" I said, "Only in the way you know a mosquito." He nodded. Well, this mosquito's about to meet the bug zapper. I didn't sleep that night. I walked the property until nearly 3 a.m., flashlight in hand, documenting every broken tile, every missing flower, every candy wrapper jammed into my irrigation system. By sunrise, I had a full incident folder, 3 backups, and a meeting request sent to my attorney. It was clear now. This wasn't just a bad party, it was war. I should have known it wasn't over. 3 days passed. In that time, I met with my lawyer twice, forwarded everything to my insurance company, and received the preliminary damage assessment, somewhere between $78,000 and $91,000, depending on whether my koi survived the pond. Assault. Spoiler, 3 didn't. The adjuster nearly choked when she saw the drone footage. She said, "I've seen vandalism before, but this is some kind of HOA-sponsored purge." Karen, of course, stayed silent. No apology, no explanation, not even a limp misunderstanding text. I assumed, stupidly, that she'd gone into hiding, lawyered up, or at least shut her mouth until things cooled down. But Karen didn't hide. Karen doubled down. On Thursday morning, I opened my email to find a forwarded legal notice from the county court system. Karen Travers had filed a civil suit against me. She was suing me for breach of agreement, defamation, emotional distress, and malicious interference with community operations. Her official statement claimed I had invited Clear Pine Ridge HOA to host a sanctioned social gathering on my back lawn, and had violently and unreasonably disrupted the event, causing embarrassment and trauma to guests and organizers. She was demanding compensation for damages to HOA property, including folding tables and 1 punch bowl, public apology in writing, and a $25,000 fine to the HOA's Community Improvement Fund. I stared at the PDF like it had personally insulted my ancestors. She had even attached a scanned, forged lease agreement, the same one from the party, with my faked signature, claiming I'd agreed to donate usage rights for outdoor space to the HOA board for seasonal events. The text was in Comic Sans. Comic Sans. I called my lawyer, thinking maybe this was a prank. He didn't laugh. Instead, he calmly said, "Welcome to American litigation. She's trying to beat you to court, paint you as the aggressor, and drag this into the press before you can establish the real story." And then he added, "Which means she's got help." He wasn't wrong. By that afternoon, the story had hit the local HOA blog, Community Advocate, a hilariously biased gossip rag disguised as a newsletter. The headline? Rogue landowner attacks neighborhood celebration, faces legal backlash. The article quoted Karen extensively. She called me erratic, unstable, and, my personal favorite, socially toxic. They even included a blurry photo of me yelling at a raccoon on my back deck from 6 months ago, completely out of context. Within 24 hours, I had voicemails from reporters, one from the Boulder Sentinel, asking if I had a comment on the community incident involving a rogue homeowner and injured guests. Another from a lifestyle blog called Harmony Living, asking if I was anti-HOA by principle or by trauma. But here's the thing about working in IT. I back up everything. By Friday, my lawyer and I had compiled a brutal counter package, full resolution footage from my security cameras, metadata proving the video files were unedited, logs from my smart lock system showing no authorized access, drone telemetry files, time-stamped images, and a detailed expert analysis from a digital forensics consultant proving the lease signature had been digitally manipulated. We also had statements from 2 guests, a middle-aged couple named Jason and Lynn who attended the party, but contacted me afterward. They had overheard Karen admit twice that I had no idea this was happening. Lynn was especially horrified. She called the whole thing some Stepford cult picnic from hell. We filed the countersuit that same afternoon. Criminal trespassing, property destruction, fraud, defamation, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and obstruction of investigation. My lawyer added a personal cherry on top, a restraining order. By evening, the paperwork had been delivered to Karen's residence. According to the delivery report, she signed for it herself. Saturday morning, the story flipped. Local radio picked up our press release. The new headline, HOA official allegedly faked lease to throw unauthorized party on private property. Within hours, the same gossip sites that smeared me started publishing retractions. Turns out a few other neighbors weren't big fans of Karen either. A Facebook group popped up, Free Morrison's Lawn, filled with memes of garden gnomes holding protest signs. Someone even edited a clip of Karen shouting over the mic at my gazebo with the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme playing underneath. But the damage was done. I wasn't dealing with a petty HOA nuisance anymore. This was a full-on public legal circus, and Karen had decided to wage it like a martyr, wrapped in a pastel sweater set. And something told me she still had cards left to play. By Monday, the HOA board had officially distanced themselves from Karen, sort of. They issued a hilariously vague statement calling the situation an unfortunate misunderstanding involving a personal agreement that was not formally recognized by the board. Translation: we're not touching this radioactive mess, but we're also not throwing Karen under the bus until we absolutely have to. Too late. The bus was already halfway over her. The media tide had turned, and with it came a flood of community sentiment that could no longer be contained. People who'd lived in Clear Pine Ridge for years began whispering stories. Some even sent anonymous tips to my lawyer. Complaints about Karen pushing unauthorized surveillance cameras, bullying older residents into compliance with unwritten codes, and once trying to fine someone for planting non-native flora in their own yard. Apparently, a lot of people had just been waiting for a match to set the whole thing on fire, and that match was a wine-soaked backyard coup on private property. But while the public sentiment was shifting, I still had to deal with the legal side. My lawyer and I spent most of that week building what he called the thermonuclear file. It wasn't just for our countersuit, it was the kind of package you hand to prosecutors when you want them to stop laughing and start indicting. We included everything: drone footage, metadata, expert testimony, voice transcripts, GPS logs, deleted security video recovered from the cloud, and even an analysis of the forged lease, comparing it to notarized documents Karen had signed with the HOA. The differences in stroke pressure, loop curves, and signature rhythm weren't just visible. They were forensic slam dunks. On Wednesday, we had our first hearing. It was a preliminary session meant to determine whether Karen's lawsuit had grounds to proceed. I arrived in a fitted gray suit and deadpan expression. Karen arrived wearing a pastel blazer, too much perfume, and an air of smug martyrdom. She had a new lawyer, a sharp-jawed man who looked like he only defended pharmaceutical companies and ex-governors. The judge was a woman in her 50s with a voice that could slice drywall. She opened the file, skimmed through the printed screenshots of Karen's lease agreement, and immediately raised an eyebrow. "I assume," she said dryly, "the defendant has seen this document?" "I have," I said, "and I also assume Photoshop has too." Laughter. Not from the judge, of course, but a couple of reporters in the back snorted. Karen's lawyer tried to recover, citing community precedent and verbal arrangements, but it was clear the judge wasn't buying it. Then my attorney stood and calmly laid out the foundation of our evidence. He didn't even touch the heavy artillery yet, just the signature analysis and a few photos of the aftermath. That was enough. By the end of the session, the judge dismissed Karen's claim entirely with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile. Then she said words I'll never forget. "If what's alleged in the counterclaim is true, this case will not only proceed to civil court, it may require criminal prosecution." Karen didn't look smug after that. She looked cornered. But the real twist came that evening. After I got home, one of the guests from the party, someone I hadn't spoken to, reached out via email. His name was Devin Lang, and he claimed he had video. Not drone footage, not photos. Video. Apparently, Devin had been live streaming parts of the party to his followers. He'd tagged it as HOA Summer Rager and thought it was some sponsored community event. He was horrified to learn it had taken place on private property. He sent me a 15-minute compilation. It showed Karen giving her welcome speech, joking that I was off somewhere building robot girlfriends, then yelling at a kid to stop jumping on my stone bench. It showed drunk guests ripping garden lights out of the ground, one woman vomiting into my fire pit, and at one point, I kid you not, someone trying to fish in the koi pond with a barbecue skewer. But the clincher, minute 13. Karen turns to the camera, laughs, and says, "Let's see Morrison try to sue." The HOA covers my ass. We had her, on tape, admitting intent, smirking, knowing full well what she was doing, and believing she'd walk away untouched. I forwarded the video to my lawyer, who just wrote back, "Game over." But for Karen, the game was only beginning to collapse. Friday morning, my lawyer submitted the new footage as supplemental evidence in our countersuit. He also filed a request to open a separate criminal case, forwarding the video directly to the DA's office. By noon, I got a call from a county investigator who asked if I'd be available to provide a formal statement and hand over the raw files. I said I'd be available all day. Hell, I'd clear the month. Karen, meanwhile, did what Karen does best. She doubled down again, this time in public. That afternoon, she stood in front of the Clear Pine Ridge Community Center, flanked by 2 HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, and held a press conference. She read from a prepared statement filled with big words like character assassination, orchestrated defamation, and illegal surveillance. She claimed she'd been set up by an angry loner with a personal grudge against community values. She said she was the victim of cyber harassment and emotional targeting, that I had used my tech connections to falsify footage and manipulate media perception. Then she turned to the cameras and said, "This is not about me. This is about every homeowner who believes in unity and order." She really thought she was staging her own Oscar speech. The problem? While she was talking, several of the local outlets were running the Devin Lang video in a split screen beside her. That smirking shot of her saying, "The HOA covers my ass," played on loop while she lectured about honor and justice. It was brutal. It was glorious. By Saturday, the dam finally broke. 3 members of the HOA board resigned in a single afternoon. One of them posted a statement online admitting that Karen had acted alone and that the board had no knowledge or approval of the event on my property. He added, "We were misled. Some of us were scared to speak out, but the truth is clear now." Later that night, I received a visit, not from the police, from the HOA president himself, a man named Charles Weller. He looked exhausted. Polished loafers, beige slacks, and the posture of someone who'd been living under Karen's rule a little too long. "I'm not here on behalf of the HOA," he said. "I'm here as a neighbor." I didn't offer him a seat, but I did let him speak. Charles explained that Karen had been twisting HOA policies for years, often making decisions on her own, and then retroactively getting board members to sign off out of fear or confusion. He admitted she had access to sensitive documents and used her authority to weaponize paperwork. She'd scared people into submission, claiming she could raise fines, report violations, block sales, even revoke community privileges. Some believed her. Others just didn't want the headache. Then he said something I didn't expect. "We want to cooperate. We're prepared to provide all HOA internal emails, board votes, and security logs from the past year. You'll find a pattern of behavior that shows this wasn't a one-off incident. She's done this before, just never this loud." That was the final nail. By Monday, the district attorney's office had reviewed the files and opened an official investigation. Karen received a subpoena. Her forged lease, the fake signature, her public statements, all of it became part of an active criminal case. Charges included filing falsified documents, criminal trespassing, willful property destruction, fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, providing false information to law enforcement, and cherry on top, unlawful assembly without a permit. That one got added after Devin confirmed the number of guests exceeded legal thresholds for unpermitted gatherings by more than 6-fold. Karen was arrested on Wednesday. They picked her up at her home. Not in the middle of the night, but broad daylight. It was public, deliberate, and devastating. News crews were waiting. She was walked out in a powder blue pantsuit, expression pinched and defiant, but her posture told the truth. Shoulders down, eyes scanning for support. None came. Later that night, I sat in the garden, what was left of it, and just breathed. The lawn was still trashed. The koi pond was down to a murky shadow of itself, but the silence was pure, clean. No shouting, no music, no laughter that didn't belong here, just the faint hum of motion sensor lights and the deep, slow exhale of a war nearly won. The trial took 5 months to begin, but when it did, it came down like a falling piano. Karen tried everything. Delay tactics, a new lawyer, claims of medical hardship. She even attempted to file a motion to dismiss the charges on the grounds that the psychological burden of online harassment had compromised her capacity for sound judgment. The judge didn't bite. In fact, after reviewing her social media history, where she had continued to post HOA updates, link anti-Morrison memes, and even comment under aliases about lawless tech bros, the court ruled that she was not only capable of standing trial, but clearly aware of her actions the entire time. The prosecution was surgical. They began with the basics, the lease forgery. A handwriting analyst and digital forensic expert testified side by side, dismantling every part of the document. It wasn't just faked, it was sloppy. Karen had used an old scanned signature of mine from a neighborhood form and pasted it into a Word doc. The expert showed how the pixelation didn't match. It was almost insulting. Then came the footage. Devin Lang's video. My cloud backups. Audio analysis. Frame-by-frame breakdowns. They played the moment she announced, "Let's see Morrison try to sue." And the courtroom went still. Karen winced. Her attorney tried to object, but the judge waved him down with a look that said, "Don't." And then came the people. Lynn and Jason, the party guests, took the stand. Charles Weller from the HOA. A former board member named Miriam, who broke down crying when describing how Karen bullied her into signing retroactive policy letters under threat of a fine she later learned didn't exist. Even a teenage landscaper testified he'd been hired to fix HOA sprinklers but was ordered by Karen to reroute one line into a yard that didn't matter. That yard was mine. The defense tried to spin it. Miscommunication, clerical errors. That Karen thought she had permission, but the judge had heard enough. The sentence: 18 months in county jail plus 3 years probation, mandatory restitution of $147,000, and a lifetime ban from holding any position within an HOA ever. Karen tried to speak during sentencing. She got 4 words out. "I only wanted to," before the judge shut it down. Meanwhile, my countersuit moved ahead in civil court. By now, the HOA had entirely restructured. Karen's old allies were gone. The new board reached out with a settlement offer almost immediately. They didn't want to go to trial. I didn't blame them. The final figure: $147,000 in damages paid out by the HOA's liability insurance, plus an agreement to issue a public apology for failure to protect community members from internal misconduct. I didn't need the apology, but I accepted it, and I used every dollar of that payout exactly how I said I would. Today, my yard is fully restored. The garden is back. The koi pond is cleaner than it's ever been. I installed new floodlights, facial recognition cameras, and a reinforced gate with a steel spine. The whole setup syncs with my phone. The moment someone steps over my property line without permission, I get a ping. And the new sign by the entrance. This is private land. Trespass once. Jail twice. People laugh when they see it, but nobody tests it. Clear Pine Ridge held a special election a few months later. The new board is quieter, calmer. They mostly stay out of my business. Charles still waves when he sees me. Miriam once sent me a thank you card. I didn't reply, but I kept it. As for Karen, she served 13 months before getting out early for good behavior, whatever that means, in a jail where she probably tried to start a newsletter. Rumor has it she moved to Arizona to live with her sister, somewhere with no HOA. Or maybe just one she hasn't tried to take over yet. I don't think about her much. Not anymore. But I'll never forget the day I came home and found my sanctuary violated, my name dragged, and my patience tested past the breaking point. And I'll never forget what it felt like to stand my ground alone and win, not in spite of the system, but by beating it at its own game.